Hello, I hope all's progressing well. My name is Kevin Dufresne, and we're here because I don't know. We can talk about it. We have a lot of topics to cover today. A few, a good amount. Call it what you will, an amount. And I just want to start off with one topic that really does interest me. It's actually a throwback topic. I find an article about priests and marriage, and I'm like, I think it's so important to bring romantic relationships into the church. Now, of course, am I setting the rules? No, though, just being curious, I look into it and find that, yeah, there are priests that come from marriage and can stay in their marriage if they're coming from a Protestant background. Now, this article is from 2012, mind you. So, that's about as far digging as I do. I tell you, internet researching. Though, I take that article and I figure, well, this might be a good talking point at least, because maybe someone else can update me. And I do have my perspective about the priesthood. I think I want anyone in the church, especially, making what I consider a sacrifice to be able to have a family. I think it's kind of beautiful. So, reading that article, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So if I'm going to ever tell anyone to join the priesthood, I might have to recommend them to Protestantism first, then segue into Catholicism, because I think each of them have something that's nice. I think, from my background, what I do like about Catholicism, the ceremonial aspects, I really do like that. And I like the, how you say, they have like, they're not trinkets, but certain tools, certain items, like artifacts that stand out. So I do appreciate that aspect of Catholicism. Just like with Protestantism and baptism, I think it's just experiential respects and understandings that I appreciate from my personal background. So I'm just curious, what do you all think? I mean, if you know anything more about it, please update me. Though, do you think that priests, nuns, just being directly within the Catholic realm, going into whatever they're going into, deserve to be in relationships? Now, the article is interesting because one priest mentions not being in the mindset that being in a relationship will be good for the relationship with God. For me, I'm like, reading the Bible, my reference point here, all those genealogies and people so close to God, I think God is probably going to be cool with the relationships, and we'll still be able to form a relationship with whoever God needs to form the relationship with. My tidbit. So while we're talking about relationships, we're actually going to go into talking about an interesting topic of online dating and catfishing, which I come across. Well, I'll tell you coming up. So while in the gym, I actually see this playing on one of the TV screens, and I'm like, catfishing. Wow. I have a few catfishing stories of my own, but I wonder what the channel is actually even talking about when I'm working out. I'm in passing, so I'm gonna get to review what's happening here live, in a sense.
They say there are plenty of fish in the sea, but just how many of them will reel you into their lives before you notice the red flag?
Joining us this morning is Samantha Correa. Did I say that properly?
Yep. Samantha
Okay,
Correa.
there we go. She's sharing her dating experience that...
Quick shout out. It's so important to ask people about their names. I know there are people that do it, some might care less, though I actually do appreciate and notice that aspect, because not everyone's name is the correct pronunciation coming out of one's mouth and understanding, especially if one thinks the spelling is familiar.
turned out to be a nightmare. Okay? Welcome to the show. Thank you for doing this. You know, the whole place is a buzz here to hear your story.
Yeah, no, it's kind of embarrassing to talk about, but happy to share my story with everyone who will listen.
Let it be a learning experience, folks.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so you shared your dating catfish story on TikTok.
Yeah, it went viral.
Yes. Well, congratulations, I guess.
I don't know what the right sentiment is there, but yeah, thank you.
All right, start from the very beginning.
I gotta hear.
Kind of interesting about virality. It happens, it doesn't, whatever, however it works. It's just interesting the space when the mention comes about virality. It's like, what is the value of it? And I guess it just depends on the viewer, audience, the giver, probably a lot of other factors as well. So I'm trying to keep that in mind as I view this. We're getting into the meat of this though.
I want to know.
So I matched with this guy on Bumble. He immediately wanted to move to WhatsApp, and I travel a lot internationally for work, so that wasn't, he wanted to talk on WhatsApp, so I thought, this is normal, like he's from Poland, he needs to get his visa sorted, so he wanted a stable way to talk, and so he told me that he would be gone for 2 weeks to get his visa sorted in Poland, and I was kind of hungover when I met him, so it was a Sunday, and I spent all of Sunday talking to him, 12 hours, I think.
Holy moly.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
I will say that was not what I usually do. I definitely don't talk to people that I don't know for that long.
So I'm wondering, is she going through like a post-alcoholic feeling? I'm really curious about the night before and the feelings up until that moment. Bumble's an app where women choose the men. So that's an interesting factor. Now the play out here is what I have an interest in. Really from the point of consuming alcohol to whatever's about to happen. So Mr. Poland, let's see.
But it was an interesting circumstance. He was a handsome man.
Sure.
Or his
Believe it.
pictures were handsome.
Yes.
Quote unquote.
So then I woke up the next morning. He had sent me like a 5-paragraph long text.
Well.
And professing his love for me, a man that I had never known, met in person. And I was like, here's the thing. It was definitely love bombing, but that's why I don't think catfishing is necessarily a confidence problem for the victim. I was like, oh, it makes sense that he's fallen for me. Of course, I'm great.
I love that confidence for you.
Well, thank you. It was a little bit self-inflated, but...
Love that confidence for you. Love bombing is a new term for me. This year I'm hearing about it. What a phraseology to use. Love bombing, when someone's just overwhelmingly saturating someone's life with all these loving messages and sentiments for whatever reason. It might be genuine, it might not. I don't know every person's situation, though I think the term is one of the terms that a person has to determine for oneself in a relationship. Because love bombing might happen and voila, everything is amazing forever. Love bombing might happen and everything is not amazing forever. So I'm curious about the term because of how a person might feel it knowing the term and how a person might apply it within their life, within their relationships. Like, oh, is this love bombing? I think is a fair question. I think there are a lot of other ways to observe, though of course it always depends on the situation. Very, very circumstantial.
That was when the red flag started raising. That long profession of love, and I was like, I screenshotted it to my friends, and I was like, this is weird, guys, right? This is weird.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like was like, whatever. But my friend, the FBI agent of the group, went on a hunt and found that this man was using a Polish influencer's pictures.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, at what point does the trip to Spain come?
Okay, now that's wild. First off, the tricky part about being online is the reality versus the digital realm. Being in a situation where one, not you obviously, but a person feels their identity is not worthy enough to represent their self online truly. When a person feels that way, when people don't feel worthy enough to put their actual self online, though are trying to date with the persona or pictures that are not theirs, that is a problem, I think, that really needs addressing personally, because only so much can happen. When the meeting happens, it's like, what does a person do? Ask, oh, what do you think about our conversations? What about all the messages you send? Like, it seems like a trap. I feel like hearing she's receiving these type of messages before the encounter, because the person might be trying to hook the other person into something that the person doesn't want to be in. And of course, anyone is subject to change their mind at any point in a relationship, with an encounter, and each person has to be respectful of that, especially when it comes to romance. Remember, romance has to be consensual. At least the way I think of it, it has to be, or else it's not right to me.
Into the story here.
This is a completely separate incident.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So not once, but twice.
I was not catfished for that Spain trip.
Okay.
So, and here's the other reason I believe the catfish. Last year, I matched with a man on Bumble. Mm-hmm. He asked if I wanted to fly to Spain for our first date, and I said yes, and it turned out to be a really great trip. So,
okay.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, nothing really happened from that. Like, it was a Spain love affair, but
only one of those in our life.
Okay. It was nice.
So, a little eat, pray, love moment. I don't know.
That's why I thought, now I can have a Polish love affair.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
Okay. So that happened. It was real, and then you run into a situation where it's not real.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Well, we want to bring in a matchmaking and dating expert, our friend Susan Trombetti. Susan, can you talk to us about how we can tell we're being catfished, especially on one of the biggest days for online dating coming up in the...
Okay, before going on to this professional, Trombetti, about catfishing and online dating, each relationship a person's going to get into is likely going to be different. So the assumption that one relationship might be similar to another is probably not the best route. Of course, I'm just sharing my opinion because I think it's important. Everyone has an opinion, I hope, to a varying degree. So when she's referencing the Spain trip as an opening for the Poland experience, I think the point I want to bring out is about maturity assessing relationships. Every relationship is different. I'm not going to connotate one relationship or one type of person with the next type. So I just think that's just important to acknowledge in this situation.
New Year?
Yes. So here's the thing. We've talked before about, the red flags that you are being catfished, but let's talk about how we can figure out now that we're being catfished. So obviously, like, love bombing is one of the signs that you're being catfished, but I'm going to give you a couple of tips that you can do at home. First of all, there are GPS coordinates on most photos. If you find that your love interest has stripped all the GPS coordinates off of the photos, and people can be private, but they miss them sometimes, that is one of the tip-offs that you are being catfished. So don't fly to Poland, right? And then
Facts, especially in the digital age, I completely agree with this sentiment because I know for safety, I won't want to have any of my photos being on the geotagging radar. And I think in this day and age with all these editing features, it's very, very possible to create this fantasy realm in a digital sense. Then when reality has to meet that fantasy, it might completely clash. So it is so important to be mindful in this dating space, online especially.
The second one's a big one, and this, is something that you can do. Reverse Google image the photo. So before Samantha ever got on the plane, if she had done that, she would have found the Polish influencer. So you don't really need to be like an FBI agent. You just kind of need to be able to check it out. And the next thing is when you Google someone, and this is something that everybody does, they Google their date. And a lot of times they think that they're in the clear when they get nothing. But, in DC, you might find that because a lot of people have a clearance, and so they don't leave a big digital footprint. So these aren't always the case, but mostly the case all the time. And a couple of these together will let you know that you are being catfished. So a lack of a digital footprint is huge. Because if they're a mass murderer, they're not going to give you their real name. So you need to be careful there. One of the next things is, and, her guy was out of.
This is a big point to me because I do like to meet people in person. If I'm going to have a romantic interest, I do like to meet the person in person, not just in this virtual digital sense. So I think there are a lot of ways to confirm if a person is real. I'm sure there are video apps for people to communicate. You have so many ways to meet a person online and talk to a person online that I think even predates, which I'm sure people do, predates before even an in-person day are sound. Because if a person doesn't have an online presence, it doesn't mean exactly what Professional Trombetti is saying. It doesn't mean the person is a criminal or hiding anything. Some people really just do not want to have anything to do with certain parts of technology and the Internet of Things.
The country, that's a tip-off that you're being catfished, but you want to get this person offline as quick as possible and into a real date. And if they cancel with some outrageous reason, that's another way that you're being, catfished. And so you need to really watch it. If you Google...
Okay, now, outrageous reasons, some people do have interesting lives, and interesting things can happen in life. If the person is genuine the online, and like I say, especially after like some pre-video meetings, I think that if something does come up and like a rescheduling needs to happen, that's a little different. Now, if it's happening constantly, then I think maybe it's time to reassess what the relationship might be at that point or where it might even go, because it is important to meet in person eventually, I think, especially when it concerns being in a romantic relationship. Things happen though too. You might meet someone a million miles away, and it might take a year or two to end up meeting, and voila, it's a beautiful relationship. It's so circumstantial, all these situations, though. To stay on the side of safety, security, and mindfulness of this human spectrum and global spectrum of online dating, especially at large, these are sound points to consider.
Reverse their phone number. A lot of times they will give you details along the way. So I had a lady that gave a detail, and he goes, oh yeah, when he ran off to Turkey and canceled the date last minute, he said, oh, I have my cell phone, I can go anywhere. So I Google reversed it. It was a landline, and that was a lie right there. So there are all sorts of things you could do. Keep notes of what they're saying, because these are professional cons, and they are going to come back and say, I never said that. And they're so good at it, they'll have you convinced that you're crazy. So these are some ways that you can, everybody's going to, if they're online, someone's going to attempt to catfish you. But these are ways, and if you experience several of these things happening, or one of them, you reverse and goes back to someone else's name. And, the last thing that you can do, the average person without hiring a private investigator, when you've kept these notes, you have all these little details. So you might have an email address, whatever. So you plug them into Social Catfish or Instant Checkmate or, Spokio, and you can really go down a rabbit hole, but you might pick up other details. And in your notes you see, and you might find real social media accounts on the person that is really catfishing you and not the person you think they are.
This is fascinating in a terrifying way.
Yeah, I would definitely be that person that would have to.
I am very afraid
I'd
right
forget.
now. Susan, thank you.
Well, don't be, because I just gave you these ways to figure it
Yes.
out.
I mean, thankfully I'm locked down, but for everybody else that isn't, I mean, this is serious. Thankfully you are okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what matters really the most here. But Susan, thank you for your expert advice and tips.
Yeah. Samantha, thank you so much. They say they're.
Yeah, I think that what Professional Trombetti is saying is very sound, especially in this day and age for people that are dating online and potentially dealing with the catfish, realistically dating online. That's the key thing about this conversation. Well, what do you do when you're dating online? It's a choice, of course. I understand some people are literally growing up with a cell phone in their hands. That's not my background. So for me, I'm like, well, meet in person in a group. Meet with a group of friends if you have a group of friends. Or meet in a public place with a lot of people. And disperse from the place separately, depending on your level of comfort, obviously. Though for the first few times when you're meeting, you don't have to take an Uber together. You don't need to do any form of ride sharing together. If you're going to be escalating the dating from online dating, just keep it very public. Slowly enter the private realm when you start to feel really, really comfortable and you have more of that information from in-person reactions, because it's so easy to hide behind technology, have little moments here and there and there and there, then boom, a person finally is with you, you're living with the person, right? Vacation is different than living in a space. I'm going to say that so many times for the rest of my life. Vacation is different than living in a space. That you're going to realize, okay, this is what it really is. So it's one thing I like to consider when thinking of this conversation of online dating and approaching it. You have to know what you want from it and be realistic. If you're thinking long term, you have to go into it thinking long term. So I'm sure there are so many different online dating websites and apps, though I think there are probably some that are more secure than others, that don't have seemingly bots or advertisements, you name it, for anyone that's into online dating, whether it's to be safe from disease or whether it's because a person is super busy and traveling all the time, whatever it might be. Additionally, I do think the fact about seeing if a person's online presence is revealing anything from their app, I mean, if the guy or girl, woman, man, just looks attractive in the pictures, that's nice. That's great. A lot of attractive people are in the world. Though how much more is the person bringing to the table is realistically important. And I'm not just talking about a job and an education. I'm talking about the other factors that make a person well-rounding. Consider if these things are present in an online profile. That's so important, because I'm sure I can walk down the street and be like, wow, whew, to so many women, and there are probably so many attractive people right around the corner. Doesn't mean that's the best option for certain types of relationships. Each person might be better for a particular type of relationship. So I think that's something to consider going into the online dating realm. Though also to always consider in-person interacting live with other individuals. All right, we're going to continue on to the next segment. Time to talk about some anime. I watch Avatar and I Want to Dance with Somebody. I like Avatar. I think the film is put together well. The voice acting partners, the acting partners in general, do a good job. I still find myself in films that are 3D and have the 3D graphics, so it's not just the glasses, it's also the animations. I still find myself acclimating to the voicing, working with the characters, though it's a touching story about war, family, and quickly for you folks that just want to know if it's worth seeing or not, yes, I think it's worth seeing. Continuing on, I think the film has a lot of familiar sentiments throughout the story as it's playing out that are kind of interesting to posit on its own in relation to, well, modernity, realistically. I think bringing in aspects of military is an interesting take. Obviously, that's a part of war, and how being a leader can be on the family, on a tribe, on a neighboring tribe, and the social politics of being together. It shows there's a bigger familial structure, a familial good societal structure that is to respect, that only involves really respect, mindfulness, love, without any hate, without any war. And so I think that's one aspect I really do appreciate about it. The film has really good action scenes, no doubt about it. The game that comes to mind when I watch the film, which is obviously really cool, though it's kind of like, is Mass Effect. Yeah, it's a great game, but you have that point where the film flows into selecting different options that we can't choose, obviously, because we're the audience. And I think that's what makes the film worth grappling with, because like many other films that leave an audience in a state of, oh my goodness, I want this to happen, I think this film brings out that point many times well. Which is challenging to do in a film, because the film brings us to moralistic points. These are very, very challenging. I remember in one scene, I'm like, he's gonna actually save this person. And I'm also like, well, I wonder what's gonna happen. Because to me, I think, well, something's already over. Like, go figure, it's a part of the film that's not over. So, I like Avatar. I think it's a touching watch, and it's very, very entertaining, and I think easy to grab onto. I Want to Dance with Somebody is a biopic of Whitney Houston's journey into her musical career, her life. And I think the film takes a lot of focus onto her sexual life and highlights of her career, her singles and her awards, in a way that is different, though not as touching to me as the documentary. I feel like the acting partners do a good job, and I think the acting partner representing Whitney Houston actually improves as the film goes on. I think her voice is actually getting better, not because I'm hearing it over and over again, because it actually improves to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I can I already, mind you, have a respect for her taking on that role because that's a tough role. To fill Whitney Houston, her voice is like from the angels. Her voice basically like hits heaven. I'm not just talking about height. So kudos to her. That's literally me in the film. I'm like, kudos to her for taking on this role because it's a big role, big singing role at that. Though I think the film does get to show a lot of what it wants to show concerning the underbelly of certain situations that people might question, that might not be clear in a documentary I remember watching like in 2018 or so, around there. So I'm just like, cool. It's a decent film. Shout out to the acting partners. And yeah, do I think it's worth watching? I think it's worth watching, though I'm not going to say it's going to be like the first film I'm going to recommend to go see. And you're talking to someone that does actually appreciate Whitney Houston's music. It's just, as a film, as a biopic, I think I rather recommend her documentary than have the biopic as maybe assisting background, you know, supporting the entire Whitney Houston experience. All right, so Bleach, episode 13. How do I feel about it? Realistically, between episode 12 and 13, I feel as though Bleach is pushing the story quick, trying to touch it up a little bit, still getting onto this poetic angle, though reintroducing things that we already know about Bleach. When I'm watching each episode, I'm just like, it's hype. They being the creators, they are really showing the development quicker. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just to get to the fun parts. I like the Zanpakuto story, the development of the Zanpakuto. That's really cool. Ichigo developing the double blades. That's really cool. So we get some new aspects to what we're familiar with, which is cool. And I think Zanpachi is already a wonderful character. I mean, if we think about Bleach in the original season, I mean, we're talking like the original Bleach before this 1,000-year Blood War. We're looking at one of the best fights, and obviously one of the characters that leaves a lot of people with a lot of confusion, because how is Zanpachi so strong? So now we come to the point where like we understand more of why Zanpachi is so strong, though get some understanding of other squads and captains. It's cool. Why don't I feel so hype about it post? Because I think the show is going so fast, and apparently there are a lot more bits to the show. So I have an interest to see what's going to happen, though at the same time, the real hype is at the center of what lies above Soul Society, which is where we're at right now in the story, which is what I really have an interest in. I think the fights are just going to get to a point where it's just so fun to watch, and I think that might be where Bleach is heading. Just really intense fights, really intense introductions, not intense, but really hype, like cool introductions to new styles of fighting, new types of equipment, and I want to say new relationships, though right now the aspect of like relationships, which brings the original Bleach back to the table when Ichigo's becoming friends with all these different types of people and learning along the way. I think that's cool. We're getting a lot more history now, so things are kind of tying in with this history lesson, and it's cool. Though we're also at like max level, like, you know, in a video game when it's to the point where everyone has a max level, then they have an additional upgrade for people, and it's like, oh, well, you can expand on the expansion, then you can expand on the expansion of the expansion. I feel like this is where we're at with Bleach, except we have like new classes that people can branch into. Well, mainly Ichigo and everyone that's above Soul Society. We're gonna see how it pans out. It's cool to see the reintroduction of Square One training, which is nice. I think all in all, Bleach is hype right now still. I am looking forward to more hype battle scenes. Otherwise, in terms of like relationships, I'm not really sure there is much to look forward to beyond that historical connection. Though I'm not one of the creators of Bleach. I'm just the audience member that's appreciating the story that's present right now and just talking about it, because of course, I don't know, we can't talk about it. All right, now we're going to do an origami exercise. So today we're going to be making a lotus flower, which will take a few folds, more than a few folds, though I'm here with you. So first thing is, you have to pick the side that you want the design to be on. That's where you're actually going to fold in. So you can see it's flat square paper with one side plain color, the other with the design. All I'm going to do is fold crossways. All right, so now we're going to have an easier folding time. That's the reason for folding initially. A lot of the time in origami is to, obviously, if you don't already know, help with folding later on in the design, the formation of our result. So from here, you can fold diagonal if you want, which is what I'm going to do. In case opening up creases early on with folding paper can help later on, depending on the fold. Sometimes it can actually add an unnecessary crease. So be mindful of what you're folding, though never feel like you won't be able to fold something because you have too many folds. Though there are some very, very intricate origami folds. The designs require a lot of attention. So we're going to go from each corner to the center to start. So we're going to take a corner in, and then our other corner in. So you can see it about halfway in this process. It's like that. Boom. And now I'm just going to fold it in again. We're going to have a square, but this time everything's going to fold in. Okay. Now we're going to take the corners again, and we're going to fold them in on the side where we already fold in. So fold in. Okay. And now we're going to fold in again. And I'll show you another halfway point. You can see, halfway point. And we're going to just fold in, fold in. So now we have another square. Okay? We have another square. And we're going to continue on the other side. So we're going to flip it over. We did our fold with the corners twice on all the corners. Now we're going to go on this side. Now we're going to turn it over with just a flat side with no folds yet, but we're going to fold in each corner to the center on this side. Okay. So once we're done folding, we're going to, guess what? Do some more folding. Okay. So we come up here. And we're going to come up here. And now look. So we have our 4 corners open here. Mind you, this is the side that we're going to be folding on. So, excuse me. Mind you, this is the side we're done folding on, and we're going to actually be flipping this over to fold on the other side now. What we're going to do is we're going to just take these corners in a little bit, just a little bit, and I'll show you on one of them. You don't need to have too much of a fold in with this one. Just going to have this little, just that little bit of a fold on each corner because of the next step. The next step is very, very intricate. It's very, very important to be careful with this one. I like to do this step very, very slowly because if done too quickly, or at least inaccurately, the paper can rip on the sides and the lotus flower will not float out, possibly, as it normally is too. So, guess what? I'm actually right the first time. We're actually gonna fold on this side so as to not be confusing. So we're gonna fold on the side where it looks like triangles are meeting at the center, not the side where squares are meeting at the center. So on the side where triangles are meeting at the center, we're going to fold. Okay, we're just gonna fold little edges here. So as you can see, just a little edge here is enough for the next step, which is gonna require us to be very, very gentle. So now that we have our folds, I'm gonna show you what has to happen. So on the other side, where we originally have our squares, we're gonna just lift up, start off lifting this tab here, and you have to pull it over like this. So you have to pull the tab over your thumb while pressing your thumb in. So I have nails, though you take the tip of your thumb, I like to use my thumb, so take the tip of whatever finger you're using and press it in while taking this side and trying to have it slowly come over your thumb. As you can see, it's nice here. And if you look closely, you'll see there are like very, very minor stresses on the paper. If you do this too aggressively, too rough, too inaccurately, the paper will have a higher chance of shredding. So again, I'm just gonna press in, and you can actually see I'm pressing into the back of my other thumb, so like my thumbs are helping to bend the paper over, but then I just try to bring it over my thumb. I'm literally trying to bring it over my finger. So don't pull it up, don't try to pull it diagonal out, literally try to bring it over slowly, then you can make some subtle adjustments so that you can get this nice little petal formation. So again, I'm gonna do this slowly here, pressing in, and then see, look, I can pull it up, it's gonna rip. If I pull it up, it's gonna have a higher chance of ripping. If I pull it too diagonal, it's gonna have a lower chance of ripping if it's just straight out, but it's gonna have a higher chance of ripping than if I just bring it down, press in, and voila. It's a double fold happening here, which is really, really nice. So we're just gonna do it one more time here. We have our way in here. Like I said, just bringing it down, and voila. The paper is gonna fold very, very nicely at this point. Now we have these really nice petals. You can leave it like this. You can leave it like this. There's no problem. It will float. If you put wax on the bottom here, it'll float. It'll be really, really nice. Though, the other design is to just open it up. See, I'm opening up the petals on the bottom here. I'm opening them up, and I'm just letting them be like the lily pad. So as you can see, you can open them up. Now be gentle here. I have a little small tear on some of these. The stresses on the paper at this point are more possible because of how tight the paper folds are. So just be mindful for design purposes. Though with the tears being at the bottom, there's less of a chance of it being apparent. For design purposes, you can also flow it different in terms of how you show it, present it. And again, if you put wax on the bottom, it'll also help seal the bottom so that water doesn't seep in, and you can just have it float on water, which is pretty cool. And depending on the paper you use, it'll float even better. So that's how you make an origami lotus. And this is actually just one type of origami lotus, which I actually appreciate a lot. So there are variations of different designs, which hopefully we'll be getting more into. All right, real quick for my spiritual folks, just want to touch base on a book I'm reading, actually, because I run out of books to read, waiting for a book to come in, really waiting for books to come in. And the book is actually called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. What on earth am I here for? And that's the question in the beginning of the book. I just read it because I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm sharing it because it has some purposeful questions, which I like, and the point to ponder. I'm not going to dig too deep into what each day is about, because there's a book, 40 days, a day, per night, or day, whenever you choose to read it. And I'm going through it slowly, so I'm like, I'll introduce each day that I'm presenting or showing, and leave you with that to think about. So, day 6, thinking about my purpose. A point to ponder: this world is not my home. The idea of bringing this up is to see really what does that statement mean to you. This world is not my home. And there's a verse to remember. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. 2 Corinthians 4:18. It's a verse to ponder that goes with the day. It's, like I say, a text realistically in the spiritual realm. And that does flow into reality in conjunction with thinking about a person's purpose. So it's not just part on one side of one's life. Respect the connections. At least I like to. Question to consider: how should the fact that life on earth is just a temporary assignment change the way I'm living right now? It's a very important question, I think, that comes up in an answer form most of the time. People talking about how we all have one life, appreciate the moment, don't know when you're going to have it again. A whole smorgasbord of these types of sayings. So I'm going to ask the question again. How should the fact that life on earth is just a temporary assignment change the way I am living right now? So, again, the point to ponder is the world is not my home. What does that mean to you, if anything? How does that resonate with you? And the question to consider: how should the fact that life on earth is just a temporary assignment change the way I'm living right now? I think about it as I read it, as I finish, and I think it's just really cool to think about it from a different perspective. I don't have to agree with everything that's in the text, though I do respect the fact that I have an opinion. This person has an opinion, this person has some suggestions that I can discern between. So I'm sharing that with you, and hopefully you question it or answer it and just explore perspectives for yourself in your life, however you choose to do it, mindfully, of course. All right, so the book I'm currently reading right now is Vegan for Life. Of course, it's a lifestyle choice, so for me, being vegan is really initially about going against inflammation, lessening inflammation, because inflammation leads to sickness. And I think it's so important to be mindful of that, especially as an individual that prioritizes health. So, being vegan for life. I'm learning a lot more about this veganism, lifestyle, veganism. And I like it a lot. I like the fact that there are so many more benefits that I'm learning. There are so many meals I'm going to get to, which that's what looks like the latter portion. The initial portion, I'm learning some history, some data. Obviously, it's not about saying another lifestyle is not good. It's about understanding more about the lifestyle that I'm choosing to live. And I'm becoming more aware of the industries at large, though with data that is supportive against the bad parts of food industries, realistically industries in relation to animal. So as to say, these are part of the reason why being vegan is good, and why, if we can, focus more attention on doing better for the animals, then here's how, and more reasoning for that why. Because it's important to do better for the animals if we can, which might be more apparent with more space to do better for the animals if consumption levels change. It's really a long-range, long-term theoretical development, though very important to consider when one is thinking about reasons to become vegan or adjust what consumption habits already on the table in order to, well, obviously, one, live a healthier lifestyle and a more mindful lifestyle of aspects of the world that we are in connection to, though might not seem so apparent that we are in connection to. The other side of this conversation, of course, is being vegan does not mean one is healthy. So keep in mind, even if a person is on a vegan diet, a person has to eat certain ingredients, has to have better consumption habits in general to ensure an optimal vegan lifestyle, if you will, optimal health. So that's really that for this book review section. You have some things to ponder, of course, and I'm glad that you're here, of course, with me. I don't know. We can talk about it. We're here. I'm hyped. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to our next episode next Monday. Keep in mind, the bookmark raffle is going to be active January. So what that looks like, so people know, a $25 gas card and a $25 gift card. I'm trying to be mindful of what people might spend things on. So what the gift card will likely be to a store, a particular store. Better that way. Gas and hopefully things that you need. And that's going to be for the month of January. So I'm going to be hyping up the bookmark raffle, especially as more people are getting bookmarks, and there are a lot of ways to get bookmarks. So we're going to go to those ways you can get bookmarks so that you can be a part of the raffle. And of course, this is how it works. You take a picture with the bookmark and you post it somewhere, and I'm going to share it for a lifetime in a highlight of people that share my bookmarks. And that's pretty awesome, I think, because it's one way of showing appreciation, and I'm really glad about it. One way you can get into what we're doing here with the discussions is by adding to the forums. So if you add to the forums, I'm likely to consider what you're sharing and I'll potentially take a review. I like to explore new forms of creativity. I like exploring good, objective good, not subjective good, objectively. So please feel free to join the conversation. I'm going to be looking for other conversations. I'm trying to be a little more active socially. Of course, I'm usually writing and reading myself, and life is just expanding. So as my life is expanding, I'm becoming more mindful, and that's in a learning sense always, constantly improving toward better, for better. Do freshest. Thanks for joining me. I hope we get a chance to be with each other again. God willing. Kevin Dufresne. As always, I don't know. We can talk about it. Hey, what's going on? thanks for joining me for I Don't Know. We can talk about it. So, to involve yourself more in the discussions, you can go to Pieters.com. Then click on the menu icon. We can go right here to Forum of Pieters. Pieters is, of course, a website for Kevin Dufresne's creative expressions, so feel free to explore other aspects of the site. Vacation, most recent album, Pondering Behind the Head, right afterward. To be in touch with the bookmark raffle, come to the merchandise and check out the 10th edition bookmark, the classic edition. And feel free to check out other merch as well. Now you see, when you click on the items, each one will have some photos, and of course, you click again, you'll have more in-depth photos, and of course, a story.
Yeah.
A poem.
Vocalizations.
I'll leave that for you to explore. Thanks for being a part of I Don't Know. We can talk about it. Again, definitely open to discussing any topics that come up. Onward and upward, Kevin Dufresne.